Hey Titans, use Adobe Illustrator to make your logos. So I already took a picture with my camera that I'm going to turn on and put into one of the USBs on the back of my computer. So the first thing that's going to happen when you plug in your camera is this iPhoto thing is going to come up. I'm going to just X that out because it's way easier to just go to your side panel, or your desktop, look for No Name, and look for DCIM. And 100 photos, and your picture is the last one taken probably. So I'm just going to scan all the way down this, and it's going to be one of these here. So I'm going to file new so that I have a page to bring it into. Otherwise I could just bring it to my desktop for now, but I'm going to go to file new. Okay, so here's my piece of paper. This is my picture that I need in here. First thing I'm going to do is use my selection tool to select it and hold shift to make it small. You don't need to transform in this program. You just need to use your selection tool. I'm getting myself dizzy. Alright, so shift. Okay, and then I'm going to deselect it. Now the first thing I want to do is start creating shapes using the pen tool and or shape tools. This is my shape tool. It might look like one of these other tools for you. If you have any of these in your project, you can just use them to create those shapes. I'm going to use the selection tool to move it into place, and if I was unable to make it the correct size, I could stretch it here and move it down over here, and I can make that shape. Now if I was unable to make it on the first try, I might have to try a second try. I'm also going to make it clear. That's what that red slash is for. Alright, so I can make it a little bit tighter right there. Now you can see that my oval wasn't perfect. Now the drawing that I drew, although it is my final logo, is still just a guide, so I can improve upon it. So that's considered an improvement. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is use my pen tool to create some of the other shapes in here. I would recommend going for the biggest shapes first. So I'm going to click off this. Now another thing is if I use my pen tool here, it's going to attach to this other shape. So I'm going to object lock that shape, so lock that selection, so that I can't interact with it when I'm using my pen tool to create the other shapes. When you type your letters, it's a great idea to make them separate. This way, so what I did is I went over to my selection tool, then I went back to my text tool and typed the second letter. This way you could do things like place them the way you want to place them instead of how they would have came out together. You could do things like overlap them and of course change their colors and object arrange, bring to front and backwards. So I could send this one to back. And you can see that I can play with how they overlap. I'll have a lot more control this way. I could rotate one of them if I wanted to. So that's the way that you should work with your letters, each individually, and that way you'll have the most control over them. So I'm going to delete this one now because there's only an S in mine. I'll just leave that one there and continue with the rest of the tutorial. I'm going to go to Safari and I'm going to look for whatever font that I'm going to use. Let's go with a comic font for this, just to show you how it works. So here's a nice, let's pretend that I had this font in my logo. I would download this font. It goes straight up to my download button, which is right here. I go into that and I double click the TTF files. Double click, install font. Another thing might come up where I have to like click the box that's over here and click install again. There it is. So click this and then click install checked and it installs. So now that was Action Comics. I also want to remember the name of it. So when I'm going to set my text in here, I can use my text tool and I can go to my options bar to make changes. So I'm going to make it big to begin with so you can see. Now I'm going to go up and look for Action Comics. Okay. If it is here. If it's not here, you might have to restart the program, but it's here. So this is the S from Action Comics, and if I were using text that I downloaded, that's how I would do it. However, in my case, I drew my own text, so I'm going to have to use the pen tool to draw out this shape. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm just going to remind you in this quick review that the pen tool drops anchor points, and you just, when you want to make a line, you drop another anchor point, and then you have to drag it out to make that curve. If I want to, whenever I make a curve, I have to shut off my anchor point. Otherwise, the pen tool is going to kind of like not allow you to make the next shape correctly. So make sure that you're shutting off your anchor points whenever you make a curve. If you're making an angular object or like a square or something like that, something that has only sides, you won't have to drag it out and shut off your handles. But whenever, shut off your anchor points to remove your handles. But whenever you make a curve, you have to shut off that anchor point to remove the handle. This black is getting in the way, so I could just go over here in the middle of my drawing and press clear, and then continue with my drawing as if nothing happened. If I go to make a curve and I can't exactly replicate the curve, just know that, Command Z, that you could make smaller curves and you'll be able to replicate everything. You don't want to have more anchor points than you need though, so you want to be careful about not making a million curves everywhere. You just want the anchor points that you need, and you'll get better at this as you, or you'll get better at knowing where the anchor points need to be as you go. Alright, so I'm about to seal the shape. This is what I wanted you to see. When you're sealing a shape, and you have to seal every shape, you have to look for that circle. Otherwise, when you go to color it, it won't work correctly. So I looked for that circle, pulled out my last curve, and released it, and now I have that S, and it is also sealed, and it's its own shape. I would probably go and lock that now. However, I also wanted to point out that we can use the white arrow tool to make changes to different areas. Like for instance, it looks like here, I don't quite hit that end there, so I can go, I could click off the path, and then I could use my white anchor tool to just adjust my anchor points, or if I wanted to, my handles. I don't want to here, but I might have made a mistake somewhere that I can make my project better by going to those handles and adjusting them so that they're where you want them to be. And again, also with the anchor points. So that's what the white arrow or direct selection tool is for. Another problem that is going to probably come up is that maybe your S or whatever it is that you worked on will disappear when you're not touching it. The reason for that, and I'm going to use my selection tool to select it if I can find it again. The reason for that is that you don't have colors in your fill or in your stroke. If you use this default button here, it'll make it so it automatically has a black line, or you could actually change the colors so that you could see things easier. But don't think that your drawing is gone, you just have to go here and fix that. Another problem that you might have is when your page kind of like goes light. Sometimes things look like this where everything suddenly gets grayed out. All you have to do to get rid of that is be on your selection tool and triple click. That'll make it so that everything goes back to normal. Alright, that's really all I wanted to tell you about in this project. That's the short version of how to create your logo. The next step is to just use my pen tool to draw all these additional things, these flames, as separate shapes. And again, I'll lock the previous paths that I worked on so that I can interact with them. And you don't have to worry that they match up exactly. You're going to obviously have to close these paths, not just make it so you did the outline and then didn't close it here. You're going to close that path or that shape and seal it. And then don't worry that the overlap is not perfect. We could use our white arrow tool to adjust it appropriately. And also, chances are, like at least for me, this is going to be a pretty thick line that goes around. So that's going to allow me some coverage of the edges of those lines. So you don't have to really worry about that. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed this short version of my tutorial. Feel free to leave appropriate comments and subscribe. And I hope you enjoy this project. Take care, Titans.